everyone. Welcome to We Love Soaps TV. I'm Roger Newcomb.
And I'm Damon L. Jacobs, author of Absolutely Shoulдлess, The Secret to Living the Stress-Free Life You Deserve, available now on Amazon, and it's bargained down, so it's actually a bargain, available for Christmas or for any of your holiday needs on Amazon.com. And we are so fortunate to be sitting here today with Elizabeth Kerri Mahon.
Thank you.
I said that right.
Yes, you did.
Yes, we did. Elizabeth, you're a good friend of ours here at We Love Soaps, and you're also a soap fan and an author.
Yes, well, I will be an author coming in March 2011. My very first book will be coming out called Scandalous Women.
Scandalous Women.
Yes, coming out from Perigee Books. I'm very excited. It's all about history's most notorious bad girls, women who dared, women who weren't afraid to break rules, pretty much like a lot of soap heroines that we know.
I was going to say, that sounds very familiar. It sounds like sort of a hallmark of the soap genre, are these women who kind of blaze their own trails.
Yes, very much so.
How did you come up with this idea for this book?
Oh, goodness. I had another blog that I was doing, and it was about my life and dating, and I was pretty bored with the whole thing. And I've been a history geek since childhood. I love history. I love reading about it. And it just occurred to me that there really weren't that many sites where you could read about women in history, women who did things in an age where women were just supposed to sit at home and knit. So I started off just writing about Lucretia Borgia, you know, the woman who is allegedly famous for poisoning her husbands, and then just continued on from there. And before I knew it, I actually started to have a following of people who were really excited and interested about reading about these women. And you know, I got laid off from my day job.
Oh.
And I had friends who were like, you need to put a book proposal together, you really need to get this out there. And I put one together, got an agent the afternoon that I sent out the proposal.
Wow.
It took me 8 months.
Which is not easy to do.
No.
This isn't typical.
Let me
It's not
tell
typical.
you.
It's not typical. I mean, I was lucky. I had an agent who had read my fiction before and was really eager to work with me. So, you know, she signed me like an hour after I sent the email. And then it took 8 months from submitting the proposal to her to rewriting the proposal, and then the book went to auction, and I sold it in August. And Damon was actually one of the first people that I actually told when I sold the book. So
we were at Catherine Hicklin's hypnosis session.
Yeah, and I had
so I wasn't sure if you were under hypnosis at that moment when you said that, or if that was really true.
Because I had this huge bouquet of flowers, and Damon's like, oh, you're bringing those for Catherine? And I'm like, no, actually, they're for me. I just sold my first book.
You brought them for yourself?
No, a friend of mine took me out for a drink before I went to Catherine's, and actually I was at the reading, David Leviathan's reading for his book that he's written with Chris.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Yes.
And I had to rush out of that because a friend called me. She's like, I'm taking you out for a drink now. And I'm like, okay. So I ran out. She bought me a drink and gave me flowers, and that's when I headed over to Catherine's afterwards. So.
That's so awesome.
Well, that's great. I mean, do you have any tips for other people, or just you have to know someone?
I think it does help if you know someone who has an agent, that they can introduce you to their agent. But I think you just have to keep plugging away. I mean, it took me 10 years of writing, and I wrote romance novels. I wrote young adult that I kept sending out. I was part of the Amazon Breakthrough Novel Award. I was a semifinalist for that. So, I mean, it was just a long process, and it just happened for me that I hit upon nonfiction as a way of getting published. I mean, I just got lucky that this idea just popped into my head, and now I have a book coming out.
So I was on your website earlier, and scandalouswoman.blogspot.com.
Yes.
I was wondering how did you get interested in these women? Is it because they're the opposite of you and you like the opposite, or is there any similarities in yourself and any of these scandalous women that drew you in?
I think it's both that they're the opposite of me, and I see some similarities as well. They're the opposite of me in that a lot of them were, some of the more scandalous were a little bit more, say, sexually free. I mean, you know, I mean, and this was in an age where women were, you were either a Madonna or a whore. And these women weren't afraid to. Some of them weren't afraid to leave their husbands in the early 19th century, where divorce was almost impossible, and to run off to the desert. And I guess there's a freedom that some of these women had that I wish that I had a little bit more of, and that I'm sort of learning as I read more about them, to sort of not be so afraid of doing things, of experience things, of traveling by myself. Which and I think that's one of the things that I'm hoping that people get out of this book, is that the history of women is amazing, and that I think we need to know more about these women, just so, because it gives you more of a sense of your own life, the things that are possible for you when you look at the women who've come before you. And that's one of the things that I've learned. And certainly I've been lucky that I've always been independent from childhood. I make my own money. I own my own apartment. So I'm definitely like these women in that way, that I've never let anyone stop me from doing what it is that I want to do, even when people have said don't do it. I'm very stubborn that way, and it's one of the things that I admire about women like Erica Kane and All My Children. Nobody stops Erica from doing what it is Erica wants to do. So I mean, and that's another thing I want women to get from this book is, don't be afraid to live your life.
Were there you mentioned Erica Kane, were there other soap characters when you were growing up that appealed to you on that level of not being afraid, that sort of inspired you to take chances, to take risks?
Catherine Chancellor on The Young and the Restless has always been a favorite character of mine. She's overcome alcoholism.
She had a facelift right on the air.
Yes. Didn't she have more than one? I think she had more than one facelift. And
I may be having one on this show at some point.
She's been very open about that. She's a woman who runs her own business. She's very independent. Yet here she is on the show. She's 80, and she's found love.
Mm-hmm.
Just goes to show you can find love at any age.
She did forget she had a daughter, but nobody's perfect.
Hey,
that's true.
Details.
That's true. When you've had as much alcohol as she did, it's very easy to lose a baby.
We've all been there.
Yeah. Who else? Definitely Reva on Guiding Lights is another woman who wasn't afraid to speak her mind, sort of do things that were scandalous. The fountain scene, which is the most famous scene I think in soap history.
I baptized myself the slut of Greenbrier, Tennessee in my own bathtub when I was a kid. Thanks to Reva.
So I mean, those women I think have, it's one of the things that's great about soaps is that it's always been a medium where or at least it used to be, where the female characters were always so strong and dominant. And that's something that I took away from my soap watching, was not that I wanted to be married 10 times like Erica Kane, or sleep with what was it? I think Brooke is, how many Forrester men has she slept with? Never wanted to do that, but certainly. I
bet you would look great in an orange jumpsuit or driving your red car over into the ocean, over the pier.
If I knew that I could hem my jumpsuit and make it more fashionable, I think it would make the idea of going to prison that much more palpable for me. But not all of us can have our own seamstress to make our form-fitting orange jumpsuit.
Well, she had to do a few favors in prison to get that.
That's true.
You mentioned at least in the past, and that was going to be my next question. Do you think that there are as many strong women on soaps today, or?
Not as many. I find, and mentioned it on the blog, the actress she's done small roles on One Life to Live, Jackie, what's her name? Anyway, she mentioned that she stopped watching All My Children because everybody wanted a baby. It was just baby, 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 baby.
Oh, Jackie Hoffman. Yes, the comedian Jackie Hoffman, the Broadway actress.
Baby, baby.
Yes, she talked about that.
And I definitely, we were talking about Passions and Teresa Lopez Fitzgerald. I mean, the entire time that show was on the air, all she wanted was Ethan.
Yeah.
And I just find that appalling. It's like she had no life other than wanting this guy. And, I find that now on soaps, a lot of the time, it's women are, it's all about the men in their lives. I mean, Meg on As the World Turns wanting Damon and... Damien.
I've done the same thing.
I know, it's Paolo Saganti.
It's very confusing when Damon is in the room.
I know, it's Paolo Saganti, who I admit is gorgeous, but, I just wish that, women on soaps were as strong and independent and had their own careers and their own lives the way they used to, and the men were sort of a byproduct of that.
Well, Meg is a great example, because in the 80s, Meg was kind of a devious vixen.
Yes.
But she came back, and they sort of wanted her to be a heroine, and she's kind of like flipped her lid at this point, but they've never written her as strong as she was then. She was very determined. Yes, she lied and cheated a lot back then, but she was a very strong woman, and I've never gotten that sense of strength from this version of Meg.
I have a question for you, Roger. What scandalous women on soaps inspired you when you were growing up?
Well, definitely Reva Shane.
Yeah.
Nola Reardon.
Oh,
Nola came out as a
Nola.
really bad girl. She split up Kelly and Morgan. She was really bad, and they kind of turned her into a heroine over time. But like the first year or so Lisa Brown was on, she was kind of bad, but it really drew you in because she was such a good actress. I loved Lucinda Walsh.
Oh, yeah.
I loved Cecile DePolognac on Another World. So many. I mean, there were like bad, evil people that I didn't really like. I liked the strong women who did bad things that you could still root for.
Yes.
They had a reason for doing the bad things that they did, or they could justify it to themselves why they did it. It wasn't
In
just
their
illegal.
mind, they're trying to help their daughter. They're trying
Right.
to do something good. They're not just doing it to be evil.
Well, that's one of the great things about soaps, or at least the way the stories used to be told, is that we could see the reasons why people did the things they did.
Right.
And we could see that a lot of times these women were not evil. They were a bitch. They were misunderstood. They were complex, and they were living in a world that didn't always share the same values, or they were often reacting to some of the circumstances in their world. And as viewers, we got to see that.
Right.
And we got to see the other characters not always understand that. But I think that's why soaps often used to have a really good message, because we can understand that people have complex motivations for doing things, even when on the surface they look like they're immoral or bad or something.
We would also see them transform over time, like
Right.
like Rachel Davis turned eventually
Yes.
Rachel Corey. We saw her
On
grow
Another
for
World.
years and years and years, and the same thing with Vicki Hudson. She was a
Right.
vixen. She went after Jamie. She didn't have many scruples, but
Right.
she had a baby. She got married. She matured over time, and she became a heroine.
That's what I was actually thinking here too when you were talking about that. I was thinking, oh, that's so Vicki Hudson, because Vicki Hudson from Another World, even as played by all three of the actresses who played her over a period of time, they really added to that. She did some nasty stuff, but we understood and we rooted for her, and we kind of she grew and she evolved over time.
And I think that's what's starting to be missing from some of the soaps is this character growth that we're talking about, how people slowly change over time. And the prime example of someone who really hasn't changed over the years is Sonny Corinthos.
Yeah.
I mean, Sonny Corinthos is the same Sonny Corinthos he was 5 years ago as he was 6 months ago, as he, at least the way he's been written as he always seems to be. I mean, it's sort of, he doesn't seem to learn anything. He, is constantly, he says he wants to get out of the mob, but then he doesn't get out of the mob. He's always impregnating women. He seems never to have learned the word condom.
I know, especially after one of his best friends died of AIDS. He still never used the word condom.
Do you think General Hospital is showing the consequences of the violence they show on the show? From a fellow writer, too.
I think so. I mean, I find for me, watching the show is pretty painful because I find the violence so unrelenting and so pointless because, nothing seems to change. Sonny never pays for his crimes. I mean, you could say, oh, well, psychologically he pays for his crimes, but he never actually physically pays for his crimes. And, for me as a viewer, if you sent him to prison for 6 months and had him, say, do something heroic in prison and then had him come out, that to me would at least show some sort of growth for the character as opposed to, covering up another murder or the most recent thing that he's done. It just gets on my nerves, and I just don't want to watch it anymore.
I'm with you, and I think General Hospital especially is probably has the least scandalous women on there by definition of what we're saying. All the strong women have been either removed or have been disempowered in some way.
And part of the reason why they've been disempowered is they come on really strong, like Alexis, like Kate when she first came on, even Olivia, and then they get drawn into Sonny's orbit, and then they spend the rest of their time defending Sonny. It's sort of like, but 6 months ago you thought he was a bad person, and now because he twinkles at you with his dimples, and he gets a little soulful and makes you a pot of spaghetti, you all of a sudden are like, oh, well, he's not such a bad person. Why do you want to arrest him? Because he's a criminal, and he either kills people or he sends people out to kill people.
Yeah.
And
Well, dimples and spaghetti are pretty enticing. Now that I think about it.
Yeah.
Thinking about it, I'll probably do anything for that.
But as a viewer, year after year after year, it does get boring. I think General Hospital gets really repetitive with that. But why do you think there's been this change on the daytime American soaps where women have been either disempowered, or, as I think they're all guilty of having women obsessed with babies? I think they're all obsessed with babies right now to some degree. Why the shift from maybe 15, 20 years ago?
I'm not really sure. I think that soaps have now become more plot-driven as opposed to being character-driven. It used to be that the plot came out of character, and now it seems the plot drives what the characters do. Prime example, I mean, this is not necessarily a woman, but, it's a guy, but, Aidan Devane came on, and he was, this secret agent and was sort of debonair, and then now all of a sudden he's obsessed with Kendall, and he's kidnapped her and drugging her to keep her away from Zach. And it's sort of like, well, but that's not the Aidan that we've come to know for 7 years.
Right.
This is the head writer and the writer saying, okay, this is what we need to do to facilitate something, so we're going to have you do this. And I think that's what's happening. It's becoming completely, what's sensational, what can we do that's really fantastic plot-wise. Let's have a tornado, let's have a hospital burn down, let's have a hostage situation, and then stuff comes out of that.
Right.
Whereas before, you had characters that you grew to love, and who wants to be Amanda on All My Children now? Who even wants to be Erica now? I mean, when was the last time Erica went into the office? She used to be this dynamic woman who, was on TV, and she had enchantments and was helping with fusion, and now she spends all her time either mooning over Ryan or yelling at Zach or trying to find Kendall.
Right. I think the role models are far and few between, especially for young women now, with these, the way they're written. It's disappointing to me as a viewer.
Well, I went to see the soap's first Scandalous Woman, Eileen Fulton, this weekend.
Yes!
And
yes!
Love her.
She was so great. Never actually seen her perform live. She's performed on the show for decades, and it was actually quite a scandalous show.
Why is it? How so?
It was just it was very funny. She kind of changed the lyrics to familiar songs and kind of made them scandalous. But it was still very classy and elegant in the Eileen Fulton style, but still, and all supposedly true. The parts about her life were true that she was singing about. But I talked to her after, and we kind of talked a little bit about how, As the World Turns has changed, and how she felt that the show has gotten away from realistic storylines.
Yeah.
And I made a comment about the microchip in Paul's brain, and I said, we should never hear Bob tell anyone that there's a microchip, and she says, I don't think he even knows what a microchip is. And I think she's really hoping that as the show closes down in September 2010, that they focus on things that are realistic and relatable, because that's what I want to see. We have a sci-fi channel, we have places to see, even Lost, which I like, continuing story that's a little, but you know what? Even Lost isn't a good example because it's more about human relationships than some of the soaps, daytime soaps. So I just like to see relationships. I like to see characters grow over time. I like to see relationships between mothers and daughters and best friends and
Yeah,
you know.
that's the other thing that I find that's missing. You know, on All My Children, you had Myrtle in her boarding house, and everyone would come and stay there, and Myrtle would counsel them, and help them with their problems, and that's missing. You know, it's one of the things I was hoping that they were going to do with Opal, and I think I just heard that Jill Larson is going to be going out to L.A. and
Right.
that she's on contract now, which is great because. That's one of the things that I was hoping that she would turn out to be is the sort of like the new Myrtle, and everyone would sort of come to her and gather around her, and that's something that's missing. And generations, just people, mother, daughter, grandmother sitting around and talking. There was an episode of General Hospital where Audrey and Leslie were in an episode, and Bobby, and it was like, oh my God, yes, that's what I want to see.
Yeah.
And I just
because it reflects your own life. Like we all have these relationships, and
I find it inexplicable that the only people that Elizabeth has to talk to about her relationship with Nicholas and Lucky is maybe Robin, who yes, she's a friend, and now they've brought on Stephen Lars, but talking to Audrey would be so wonderful to have that sort of interplay, and Audrey can sort of maybe bring stuff in from her own life, stuff that she did, to reflect that, and that's missing.
It is. I got to say, the one thing that I think Days of Our Lives is doing so well right now is doing exactly what you are saying with Maggie Horton and some of the veteran characters, but more so with Maggie Horton. She's really there as a sounding board of rational, sound, loving advice, and it's working because she draws from her own
Right.
life. They're doing it, and they're doing it well, and they're still doing well in the ratings, so I think that could be, I wish that was more of a sign for soaps. But let's go back to General Hospital for a moment, because we were talking about General Hospital, and the big thing lately has been Franco. James Franco. What is your take on what's been going on with James Franco and the whole story? And his whole love affair, obsession with Jason.
I was excited when I heard that James Franco was going to be on General Hospital, and that this was something that he wanted to do. He wanted to experience soaps because it was part of a project that he was going to be working on. I thought, great. And then I heard that it was going to be his obsession with Jason Morgan, and my heart just sort of sank because I was like, oh, okay, so it's going to be that kind of storyline. And so far, all of his scenes, apart from the scene with Maxie, it's all been about Jason, which to me, it's like if you're going to have a movie star like James Franco, why not involve him with everybody on the canvas? Why couldn't it have been that he was going to paint a mural for General Hospital, for the Tanya Jones Memorial, or the Stone Kates AIDS wing, or something, and bring that in, so at least you can have the art thing. You can still have him be obsessed with Jason Morgan, but have the storyline be a little bit more encompassing than this little tiny little bit that we have.
Yeah. God, I love that idea.
I mean, not that the scenes on Friday between him and Jason weren't pretty funny with the dip and the whole thing, but I just thought, well, wouldn't it have been interesting to see him spark with Edward Quartermaine? And scenes, at the hospital and Monica and, maybe painting, and he does the mural and everyone's appalled because it's like all dead people or something. I mean, I thought that would have been, funny or something, but now it's just sort of like, oh, okay, so it's going to be about Jason, and, they're going to have this little talk, and he knows about Michael, and he'll probably end up dead, and then it'll be over.
It's just completely expected. And that's the thing, you get this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to promote your show, and they do like the completely expected thing. Of course it's about Jason.
Well, what would have been unexpected, and I thought they were going this way, was to really make Franco in love with Jason, because he is.
Yeah.
He's as in love with Jason as anyone else on that show has been, and instead of just naming it as that, they're sort of guising it under, like, I'm obsessed, or we're both murderers, or we're the same. We are talking about a boy crush, people. Let's just call it that. And that would have been an interesting story.
That would have been funny.
That would have been funny, and it would have been interesting, and it would have been something they'd never done before. James Franco's very comfortable in gay roles, and they could have pulled that off. Unfortunately, I think you're right. They're just going with what the signed, sealed, delivered Guza version of General Hospital, and, let's just cue Mad World and be done with it. I mean, come on. This is not...
What's fascinating is, a lot of the news reports about this when they were sort of reviewing it. I mean, one of the first things that they said was, the show is called General Hospital. Where's the hospital? And it's sort of like...
Well, it's like Desperate Housewives, and there's no housewives. If you're gonna, that's what the show is. I mean, some shows, as the world turns, maybe you don't know this is a multi-generational family show.
Right.
But when the show's called General Hospital, it's about a hospital.
And it's they still could have done his serious boy crush on Jason, but maybe he was admitted to the hospital because he fell off a roof following Jason or something. They could have done more with it.
Sure.
If they're going to do it that way, instead of just this little sort of isolated little thing. And I just find it. I find myself sort of fast forwarding through those scenes, which I'm pretty sure that's not what they want.
I don't think that's what they intended.
And
but clearly by the ratings, other people are doing that too.
And that's what I wanted to talk about, is the ratings. The most recent ratings show, once again, General Hospital is kind of stagnant to going down. They're not. This hasn't really done anything to spike the ratings.
No.
I mean, it seemed like it got a lot of mainstream press, and a lot of mainstream publications, at least online, were talking about it.
Entertainment Tonight was talking about it.
A lot, and lots of different websites, but it doesn't seem like it translated into viewers at all.
No.
But meanwhile, All My Children is in fourth place and seems to be the number one ABC soap, despite me thinking that it's really the worst in quality of the three. And One Life to Live is dead last in total viewers.
And I don't understand that, because out of the three shows, One Life to Live is the best written of the three, the most enjoyable to watch.
But it's also the highest rated on SoapNet, and we have to take that into consideration when we're talking about the ratings.
Right.
SoapNet doesn't, I think only on a quarterly basis do they ever tell us what the ratings are, but the last time they came out, One Life to Live had hit new highs airing on SoapNet. So people are, I think the Nielsen's are just sort of all skewed and messed up because they're really not accurately capturing who's watching.
I've never understood that anyway, because it seemed like two shows with the same ratings, with the same demo, could have different ad rates. So it's all about perception from the advertisers too. And we also don't know if All My Children has 2.5 million and One Life to Live has 2.5 million, what are the demographics of those? Like, I know when Friday Night Lights was able to stay on because they had were one of the top shows with viewers that made over $100,000 or more, which is really attractive to advertisers. So we don't know what the demographic breakdown is other than age of those ratings, but it sure seems like All My Children is a favorite of the folks at ABC. They recently added another All My Children repeat. I mean, it's 4 a.m, but they added another All My Children repeat to the daily repeat, so now it comes on an extra time.
Well, speaking of All My Children being ABC's darling, what did you think of the tribute to All My Children on The View? Speaking of which, we were at The View last week. Unfortunately, we weren't there when they taped that show.
But we did get some good loot.
That's right. They were really nice. But and we got to see All My Children right before they stopped taping. So we were there. We
did see a lot of the stars in the hall.
Saw the stars in the hallway and got to stop and say hello. But that right after that, The View did this big tribute to All My Children. Now, before I say my opinion, just kind of what you thought of that.
I thought it was interesting that out of all the people that they had on the show besides Susan Lucci, it was Rebecca Buddick who's coming back as Greenlee, and it was just sort of like, I mean, I know maybe some of the actors weren't working that day, but it's not like they couldn't have come in to be on the show. So it just seemed like, so is it the Erica Kane, Rebecca Buddick show? Is that what you're trying to tell us? It seemed kind of haphazard, and I was just sort of like, do you really know the show? It just seemed...
Well, I don't know if we read sometimes into some of those things too much. I know.
I think maybe
when we saw Guiding Light at the Paley Center for the final thing, there were some legendary actors or 25-year actors in the audience, and then Bradley Cole was on stage. And I thought, well, this is kind of weird, like how they've decided who's on stage and who isn't. I thought the same thing. I love that they opened up with Agnes Nixon. I mean,
Love
she
that.
deserves it. I'm glad that they did that. I would have, Ray McDonald is retiring. I would have loved to see Ray McDonald as one of the men.
That would have been nice.
Featured in the men's segment if they were going to do that. I would actually like to see Susan Lucci and Ray McDonald together.
That would have been nice.
With Agnes, those three on the seats, and I could have taken them the whole entire episode. With a few more clips sprinkled in.
And maybe a little Darnell Williams. I mean, they had, Debbie Morgan, who I absolutely adore. But since Debbie Morgan and Darnell Williams are the only really, African-American super couple ever, really, it would have been nice to see the two of them and to see a little bit of that history as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I know they only had an hour, but I would have liked if during the week, instead of the little sort of mystery thing that they had done, maybe they could have done throughout the week, they could have featured a little bit of what you were talking about. Like maybe one day they could have had Susan Lucci and Ray McDonald, and then maybe on another day they could have had, the men of All My Children, and then another day maybe a little segment on the women of All My Children, instead of this whole, even though Susan Lucci...
But then when would Joy have time to insult one of Tiger Woods' mistresses? I mean, you have to leave time for the other thing.
Well, and obviously Whoopi Goldberg felt like Thorsten Kaye was supposed to be there. She made sure that she talked about him, even though he wasn't there. It seems just like, on one hand, I was glad that they were paying tribute to it. On the other hand, it just seemed really sad. I mean, having Agnes Nixon there talking about how great the show is when it's not. It's not any of these things. And I have a question for you and for the view. Did anyone ever hear of a tiny little show called One Life to Live? Did Agnes Nixon remember that she actually created that show and that show is actually going in that hallway? They kept saying, I think Joy Behar and Whoopi goes I don't even know what's going to be there.
Well,
and
first
Agnes
of all,
Nixon when she dissed her own show, she dissed One Life to Live at the very beginning when she's talking about, I had been doing some other shows, but everything was but my heart was All My Children. I really loved All My Children. What about your other baby?
One Life to Live was really
here in New York.
2 years, less than 2 years old at that time.
Yeah.
Right. And Barbara didn't know if it was 30 years or 40 years. It's like somebody made us do this show, and we have no clue. I think Sherry was on more than anybody. Sherry seemed to be a genuine fan and knew what she was talking about, so I did appreciate that.
But why not mention, I mean, if you're ABC and we're all working for the same company and we're all the same cause, why not promote and really push the idea that, hey, One Life to Live is going to be here now. One Life to Live is a great show, and now they're going to be the neighbors of The View. It wasn't mentioned once.
That's why I just get the feeling that there's a plan for One Life to Live. ABC really is favoring All My Children. And, like I said, there's a new airing on SoapNet, and they gave them this special. Are we going to have a Welcome to the Studio, One Life to Live episode?
Probably not.
Probably not. I mean, I know that they have had Cassie DePaiva on the show as a guest host on The View, and I think they've had maybe a couple of other, of the younger female stars.
But didn't they say Cameron Matheson has been on 18 times or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. and I mean... All My Children was the first soap that I really, really started to watch when I was, little Elizabeth. So to me, it's my favorite in terms of I will always have an incredible soft spot for All My Children. But, I have to agree with when Soap Opera Digest said it was the most disappointing show of the year. And now that Chuck Pratt is gone, my hope is, and I doubt it's going to happen, but I would love to see whoever they hired to be head writer to sit down with the EP and Agnes Nixon. Not saying, Agnes, we want to bring you, but just say, look, this is your baby. You created the show. What did you intend? What was the impetus? And let's get back to that.
So let me ask you, I want to get back to Scandalous Women before we run out of time.
Okay.
Agnes Nixon, Scandalous Woman?
She may not actually be a scandalous woman, but she certainly knows how to create them.
I love that. Barbara Walters, Scandalous Woman?
Barbara has been scandalous. She, in her autobiography, she mentioned a few scandalous things that she did. She had a little extramarital affair with a senator. So yes, definitely a scandalous woman.
So that could make her a scandalous woman. She's kind of gone outside the bounds, outside the expectations
and also,
of society.
Yes, and definitely, she was a pioneer for women in morning television when women were just supposed to just stand around and look cute and do the weather. She actually was able to create a niche for herself and became one of the first female anchors, I think, in the evening news.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely a scandalous woman.
Sarah Palin.
Yeah, Sarah Palin is
She's
definitely
a scandalous woman, okay.
Scandalous for all the wrong reasons. Please do not use Sarah Palin as a role model. Please.
What ways? How does she qualify as a scandalous woman?
Well, definitely, I think someone who, gave up her role as governor of the state of Alaska for absolutely no good reason, seems to only be now bringing out her son Tripp, who has Down syndrome, only as I hate to say a prop. But you didn't see this child at any time at all during the campaign, but now, she's with that baby all the time. I think she's someone who is uninformed, seems to feel that all you have to do, it doesn't matter what message you have, because no one's listening to you, really. They just, they're responding to her as some sort of, icon or something. And I just think that, if you're going to run for office, don't model yourself with Sarah Palin. Please don't.
Okay. Lady Gaga.
Love Lady Gaga.
She's a scandalous woman?
Yes.
How so?
Love her.
What makes her scandalous?
Because she's fearless, and she doesn't seem to care what anyone thinks about her. She's as much a musician as she is a performance artist, and every time I see her, she's dressed in some wild and crazy outfit, and I love it. I could watch Lady Gaga all the time.
Speaking of Lady Gaga and how she ties into soaps, one of the teasers of Venice, I think, the ringtone on somebody's phone was a Lady Gaga song, and then I noticed that got removed.
Oh, so they must not have done it right.
Well, the reason why you rarely hear good music on soaps, and Mad World, I don't know how much they paid for it on General Hospital, but we don't hear music we know on soaps anymore because it costs too much. When Guiding Light had a prom from the 80s, there was zero 80s music because nobody can afford musical rights. So there's no way that web soap or daytime soap's going to afford Lady Gaga songs.
That's disappointing.
Which is probably why the karaoke on General Hospital, all the songs are really bad 80s.
The cheapest songs we can sing as possible.
What's in the catalog that we're really not going to have to pay a lot of rights for? Okay.
How about Crystal Chappelle, scandalous woman?
I think certainly in terms of what she's doing with Venice, the fact that the anchor of the show is a woman who is gay and is open about it is certainly scandalous. And I think that the one interesting storyline that Guiding Light had was, her character Olivia and Natalia, and the two of them played it for all it was worth. I love that because it was old-fashioned storytelling at its best. I wish that they could take a leaf from the slow build of that relationship and bring it onto other soaps, because that was a perfect relationship.
What did you think of Venice?
In the 5.5 minutes or however long it was on, I got a sense of the characters, I got a sense of the relationships, I got a sense of what the show was going to be, and I was intrigued enough that I could see myself possibly plunking down the $10 to continue to see if the quality stays as it was in that first episode. I think it's going to be a boon for soaps, and I'm really excited at this world of web soaps.
Me too. I mean, it's so sad what's happening with As the World Turns in network TV.
Yeah.
But, and I talked about this with Robert Newman, and that interview is going up this week on We Love Soaps, about how when there's oftentimes in our lives when there are endings, there's also beginnings, and there's new opportunities. Tina Sloan talked quite a bit about this with Changing Shoes. What about Gotham? Any thoughts, impressions?
Thinking about it now, my first reaction was a little harsh because I think I expected so much because it's Martha and Michael Parks and Annie Sayre and these really amazing actors. So I was expecting a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get what I was expecting, but I'm still willing to keep watching to see where she's going to go with it.
Yeah.
Because I think that, if, as you said, she wants to have it on more than once a week,
I think the goal is, I know Tristan Rogers would love to air his show that's coming up 3 times a week. I think Martha would like to air hers more frequently than every other week. And I think for people that are daytime soap fans, that would draw them in more, to see them more frequently. Or, if something happened today, and maybe you were really intrigued or just mildly intrigued, you don't have to wait so long to get another fix.
Right.
Yeah, because, at the moment, the episodes, they're only 5 minutes long. I don't know if ever we'll get to the point where web soaps are the same amount of time that the early daytime soaps were, where they were 15 minutes. But I think if you had it on 3 times a week, 3 5-minute episodes, I think you could really start to build the story, and I think that you really draw in the viewers, because I think the potential is there. I got a little bit of a sense of the story in the first 2 episodes of Gotham, but not enough.
Yeah.
I wanted a little bit more. I wanted to know a little bit more about who these people were. There was a scene between Michael Park's character Richard and I think Margaret Reed, who I think is playing his wife, and there was this sort of faux kiss between the two of them, and I was sort of like, I don't know what that was or why she did that, but I'm hoping that I will eventually find out.
Right. Well, I think they're waiting and they're unveiling slowly, which is very much in the tradition of daytime TV that we were talking about earlier, kind of the slow unveiling of story, building up characters. So, Elizabeth, I want to say how wonderful it has been to talk with you. I want to talk with you more, and people have to wait over a year to see your book. But they can go to your blog now at
scandalouswomen.blogspot.com.
And I know I've gone there. I've learned a lot. I took a lot of women's studies class, actually, at UC Santa Cruz.
Excellent.
But I'm learning a lot from your blog as well. And it's also a great reminder, and this history needs to be kept alive, and it needs to be kept vibrant, because a lot of, especially younger people, don't get taught this in school, and they don't get taught these stories in college. I wish they would, but, these women are a part of our history today in politics and entertainment and sociology, and we need to keep that alive, otherwise it will get erased by some of the more traditional patriarchal ways that history gets told.
Yeah, unfortunately, history, for the most part, is still written by men. But I like to call what I write her story. So I'm giving her story, giving women a voice that they've lost over the years. So.
Excellent. So we're going to keep going back and reading her story at Scandalous Women.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Take care.